Thank you. So we'll continue our discussions on the business model canvas. What is important for you to understand is, this business model canvas will evolve as you go through this 16-week program. And if you look at this 9 blocks, all these blocks are going to be very useful. All these blocks are going to be very useful when you start building your pitch deck for the investors, okay? Because the pitch deck for the investors is talking about your business, right? And so these building blocks are going to help you to do that. Okay. So today I will jump straight into the presentation. Let me share my screen. And so if you remember last time, we spoke about value creation, right? We said that there is a value proposition that you take to your customer segment. Okay, so it's the value is what you provide to the customer and price is what the customer pays to you. Okay, so we saw this last time. Okay, we also spoke about the buying journey. This is very critical for me to emphasize because, some of you have written the channels and the customer relationship, and without really understanding the buying journey. Okay, so you should really draw your entire buying journey as well as your engagement journey. Okay, so the entire customer life cycle, which will help you to understand which channels will provide you the right touch points, okay, for on the customer journey, to help you decide on the right channels and the right customer relationships. Customer relationship usually is, how are you going to keep that relationship? Is it going to be a digital customer relationship? Is it going to be an account manager? So it is not about, why you want an engagement customer relationship, but how are you going to bring that into picture, okay, on your business model. We also spoke last time about the value equation. So value equation is about how much value you are creating and what price the customer is paying to you. Okay, so the customer is always looking for a higher value from you than the price that he is paying. Okay, so that's the balance of the value equation. And we also spoke about the monetization equation. Okay, so I said that monetization equation is about your captured value from the customer is greater than the cost to deliver that value proposition. Okay, so we spoke about that, but we only covered revenue streams. So we have to now look at the other part, the cost part. Okay, so we are coming to now a very critical aspect of the business model. So we will talk in this session about the value that you are producing, okay, and that you are delivering to the customer, and how are you creating that, how are you producing that, how are you delivering that. That's all in the left hand side of the business model canvas. So this is about the value chain, and 3 major components in the value chain will be: one is what are you doing, okay, what are the resources you have at your disposal, and who are the people that you are partnering with. Okay, so this entire thing decides your value chain, which will allow you to produce and deliver that product or that service to the customer. Okay, so let's straight jump into the key resources. Okay, these are the important company assets, okay, to make the business model work. Okay, this is the most critical part on the left hand side because this is your differentiation. Okay, if your competitor needs to beat you, he needs to replicate your key resources, which are which are building that value proposition for you, which are allowing you to produce that product, which are allowing you to deliver that product to the customer. Okay, so your competitors will always look at your key resources and how can they replicate those resources in order to produce that product or that service. Okay, and this is what will make your business very, very unique. Now, there are various types of resources that we will look over here. One is a physical resource. Okay, so you could be having land and building, plant and machinery. It could be financial resources. It could be intellectual resources like your IP. For in the case of Go Vidyut, right? He has an intellectual resource over there. Your software, these are all intellectual resources, and human. Okay, the people basically. Some of the key people that are your key resources. Okay, for example, when you go to investor to raise money, he will look at the people behind the startup. Okay, because that is your key resource. They are the ones who will make sure that your startup is successful. So they want to make sure that you have the right people on your team. Now, all these key resources, need not be owned by you. Okay, they can either be your own resources, these are owned by you, or you could lease them, or you could license them. Like for in the case of an intellectual property, you could license some technology. Okay, or you can get some contracted people, right? You can get contracted human resources, or you can get physical resources on contract. Okay, so this need not completely be owned by you, and that is the decision that you have to really make. Which of this you want to own, which of this you don't want to own. Okay, so many startups basically fail to think strategically about key resources, okay? Because what they do is they look at a typical business and they say, okay, these are the resources that they have, and I will put them in my business model. That's not how it is. That's why we call them key resource, okay? You have to evaluate each resource and see if this resource you want to own, or you want to contract, you want to license, and which is that resource that will make you very successful, okay, which is essential to your business success. Okay, so apart from these four types of resources, there is one more type of resource. Can anybody tell me which one? Digital. Oh, sorry, I just clicked ahead. So digital is the new type of resource. That's the because we are into a data world now. Okay, so if you look at people who spoke about business models earlier, they never spoke about digital resources, but digital resources are now becoming really key differentiations that you can have. One key resource, obviously, which I'm going to talk about a little later, is the intellectual resource, and we will go into it deeper. But before that, I think you need to understand the other blocks, okay? Because they are all interrelated. So let's come to key activities. Okay, these are the core activities that you need to perform. Okay, so to deliver your value proposition, obviously. Okay, these are the most important activities that you as a company want to do or want to control. Okay, and want to be sure that you have your arms around them to make your business model work. Okay, so this could be various types of key activities. They could be production, okay, means writing of software, DevOps, QA, okay, it could be R&D, okay, it could be supply chain management, or it could be managing your own platform. Okay, for example, even people manage their own platform. Okay, so that's one of their key activities over there. So the key activities are your core activities that you want to do. Okay, so are there non-core activities also? So depending on the nature of the business, some of the activities that you are doing may not be core to deliver your value proposition, but they need to be done. But this is not your core competency. So what you will do is, you will look at non-core activities and see, do I really need to do this with my business myself, or can I do an outsourcing? Can I do a partnering, and have these activities handed out to my partners? Okay, so these are activities like sometimes, you might take software developers on contract. Okay, you might give a contract to a company in India and say that, okay, you build this software for me. Okay, so, because you are thinking that part, which is about developing the non-core part of the software, can always be outsourced. Okay, or sometimes you might outsource data processing, like payroll processing and so on. So this can be outsourced. Sometimes people even outsource supply chain management. Okay, so depending on the nature of your business, supply chain could be your core activity, or it could be non-core activity. If it is a non-core activity, you will obviously look at partners to whom you can outsource supply chain, logistics, and so on. Okay, now we come to the key partnerships. Okay, so this is the network of suppliers and partners to make your business model work. Okay, so your company has certain core competencies, as I said earlier. Okay, everything else which is non-core to you, you will try to look for suppliers and partners who can handle this. Okay, very often, the partners are more competent than you are in some of these activities which are non-core. Okay, which are not your core competencies. So, and it is always good to use some of these partners. So what are the basic motivations, for you to for you to look for partners. Okay. A, do I have that competency? B, is it core to my business? Can somebody do it cheaper and better for me? Okay. So this is where you will try to look at, outsourcing or partnering with people. Now, there are various types of partnership. I think this was the question the founder of Ventura had asked, how do I look at the partnerships? So there are various types of partnerships. Okay, one is a typical buyer-supplier partnership. Okay, so you can have a deeper relationship with your supplier for some of the materials that you are sourcing from them, or some of the resources that you are sourcing from them. Okay, so partnering is all about access to resources, skills, which can help you gain cost efficiency. Okay, which can help you the time to market. Okay, for example, if you are trying to make your own product, I think for example, Grammy Pay. Okay, so they have their own product, right? That which device that they have. Okay, do we make this device in-house? Do we outsource it? Is there a partner who can do this better and do it faster, because they already have the tooling and the necessary machinery to do that? Okay. Partners can also help get you access to newer markets. Okay, so if you're looking at a new geography where you have not been earlier, okay, maybe it's a different state, maybe it's a different country, maybe it's a different language, where the partners that already have a foothold can be helpful to you. So if you look at these four types of partnership that I have listed, the first two, buyer supplier and strategic alliance, are the core partnerships that most of the people have. Strategic alliance obviously means a non-competitor partnership, which is symbiotic in relationship. Okay, so for example, a telecom operator providing Wi-Fi in a coffee shop, it's a strategic alliance. Both stand to gain from it. Both can leverage each other's brand to send positive signals to their consumers. Okay, so things like sales partnerships, outsourcing partnerships, supply chain partnerships, they fall under these strategic alliances or buyer-supplier partnerships. Then there are two other kinds of partnerships, like there is a joint venture for collaboration. Sometimes what happens is two companies come together and they partner to come up with a product. Okay, and maybe one company puts their entire marketing on the table, and the other company puts the product on the table, and they do a JV and take that to the market. Okay, so there can be various types of JV collaborations. Is basically trying to create a new business out of the partnership. Okay, so that's the meaning of the joint venture collaborations. Okay, a lot of startups may not go that route. Okay, so we will not dwell into it too much. But another interesting partnership that you have to look at is strategic co-optation. Okay, so this is where you are competing with the partner, at the same time you are cooperating with the partner. Okay, so sometimes it so happens that you have to work with partners who might be your competitors. Okay, so for example, I'll give you an example of Netflix and Amazon. Okay, Netflix and Amazon are fierce competitors when it comes to video streaming. Okay, but Netflix uses Amazon's cloud. Okay, so that's the kind of strategic co-optation that people have. And very often in the startup world, we say that it's not about competing, it's about cooperating. Okay, so how do we figure out a way that we don't cannibalize each other's businesses, but we have very nice contracts that allow us the freedom to operate without watching over each other's shoulders. So now let's come to the cost structure. Okay, so all these three blocks which you saw, your partnerships, your key activities and key resources, all of them will contribute to your cost. And in this block of cost structure, we are going to capture all the cost, to operate the entire business model. There will be some costs on the right hand side also, like the sales channels and so on. Okay, so they will also be added to this cost. Okay, so the moot question here is, not just finding out what are your costs, but finding out how they are managed. Okay, so when we start talking later in our program about the financials for your startup, this block will become really critical. Okay. So this is very crucial for you to understand, what are my costs to deliver the product? What are my costs to acquire customers? So all this cost structures are going to be residing in this block. Okay. So again, if you look at cost structure, it depends again on how you are driving your company. If you are a cost driven company, that means, you are a company which can only survive if your costs are very, very low. If you remember when I spoke about value proposition, I said, once you figure out that you want to deliver value to the customer, there are two ways to do it. One is, increase the value 10x or decrease the cost 10x, right? So you could be driving from a cost perspective, or you could be driving from value perspective. Let's take some example. Okay, if you're driving a company from cost perspective, typically, let's say an e-commerce company, okay, they will concentrate on reducing cost as much as possible, through automations and so on. Okay, so that is a cost driven nature of the business model. Okay, the other one is a value driven. So value driven business models are less concerned about cost. Okay, they are more focused on creating value for which the customer is willing to pay. Okay, so take an example of company like Apple. Okay, all that Apple is worried about is how do I maximize the value to the customer, and if I do that, I know the customer will pay the price for it. Okay, so there are these ways to do your cost structures, whether it is cost driven or value driven. Again, it depends on the nature of the business. Okay, but there are some examples. So if I have to take an example of Amazon itself. Okay, so Amazon likes to drive value through customer experience. It's innately focused on delivering on customer centricity. But at the same time, they are very keen to reduce the cost. Okay, so I'm going to cover what we call as a flywheel of Amazon a little later in today's session, which will show you how Amazon enhances the user experience. That means increases the value, at the same time how it tries to reduce the cost. And this whole thing is interconnected, and we will see, because that's another very important thing for you to consider when you construct your business model. Okay, so there are different types of cost structures, and you have to be aware, which are my fixed costs, okay, which are my variable cost, how do they vary? Okay, do they vary stepwise, or do they vary unit wise? Because all this information is going to be required when you do your financials. Okay, and while your financials are very simple, you will need to understand the difference between fixed and variable costs. You will need to understand, as you go year over year, can you leverage the economy of scale as your business scales? Okay, can you leverage the economy of scale? For example, again, if I come to an example of Amazon, or an example of Flipkart, all of them have such high velocity of business and high scale of business. The economies that they have in logistics, fulfillment, it's hard for anybody else to manage, and that's what keeps them ahead in the game also. Then there is also a term, not too relevant over here for you, but I should mention it. It's called economy of scope. Okay, economy of scope is very different from economy of scale. Okay, so economy of scope is, let's say you have a product line, which you are selling, and you think of another product line which you now want to introduce. And if you introduce that product line, you will be using the same infrastructure for manufacturing, you'll be using the same infrastructure for sales and marketing. Then that is called as the economy of scope. Okay, because the same scope will apply to a new product line. Okay, and since you're already an expert in that, and you have optimized your costs, it becomes so very easy to do that. Okay, for example, let's take a case of a shoe manufacturer, okay, producing men and women sneakers. Okay, now if he wants to add a line of children's sneakers, okay, it's an economy of scope, because they will use the same production equipment, they'll use the same supplies, storage, distribution channels, to make this new line of product. Okay, and this will also help them further leverage what we call as economy of scale, because now their scale has gone up, right, of manufacturing and of deliveries of shipments and so on. So again, they will experience that economic benefit over there. Now, having covered the entire left-hand side, I want to go back now to key resources, okay? Because, I stopped when we were talking of intellectual resources, right? So here I want to spend some time and talk in terms of algorithms as a key resource, okay? So if you look at the startup models today, okay, they play very heavily on AI, okay? Or, in a typical parlance over here, we call it algos, okay? So they play very heavily on algorithms, to make their business models exponential, okay? So suddenly, uh, because algorithms can give you a lot of advantages. And let me uh, take this example of algorithm, which is a very key component of your key resource, and see how it can impact various business model blocks, okay? So here you look at this. Algorithms can help you do things faster. So you see the speed, okay, can help you scale faster, okay? Because with algorithms, you don't need to add people in the same proportion as your scale, okay? Because the algos are handling a lot of things. You may need to add computing resources, but not typically people cost, okay? Similarly, human constraints, there are areas, where, like, for example, radiography, okay? So if you look at radiography, study of the images and trying to identify, there are a lot of AI algorithms that can actually pinpoint, where the problem areas are, and then the doctors can really look at that, okay? So it removes a lot of this human processing and human constraints, so you don't, because you know if you want somebody to study the radiographic images, you need somebody trained for that. You need somebody capable of doing that and doing it accurately, okay? Humans have a problem of fatigue, right? It can be mental fatigue and physical fatigue both, and they may not uh, be performing at the same level all the time, okay? Algorithms can also help reduce your resource usage, okay? So on this key partners, okay, if you look at this on the key partner side, algorithms can also help you leverage your third party asset, okay? So the classic case is Airbnb. What Airbnb does is it shows your host, okay, this is the going price in your area, okay? So it's a very good value proposition to the host, saying that, okay, now I know what prices to quote over there, and if I can afford, I will put my house there, okay? And that's how you get a leverage on that asset, right? So you will have more people coming to you now to Airbnb than anybody else, because others are not offering that, okay? Similarly, on the cost structure, okay, so algorithms can help increase the efficiency of your entire value chain, and it can also bring your cost down, because you have seen, it eliminates human constraints and so on, okay? And also brings a lot of efficiency to the system. So key activities, you will look at automation, okay? To say things very simply, in key resources, you will look at AI to actually do human work. You could think of introducing chatbots for customer service, okay? In key partners, I have given you already an example of Airbnb, okay? In case of cost structure, let me give you an example of Siemens, okay? So Siemens uses predictive maintenance, okay, which allows them to drive down their costs of maintaining the plants and machinery, okay? So that's again the use of algorithms there. Now, if you look at the right hand side also of the business model, also the algorithms play a pivotal role over there, okay? So for example, you can use algorithm as a value proposition, okay? So if you look at iPhone of Apple, it is the algorithms that provide the SLR functionality on a phone, okay? So typically you had this big cameras, right? Single lens reflex cameras, SLR cameras, okay? Now that same functionality is available on iPhone, and the reason it is available is because iPhone acquired that company in UK, okay, which provides them algorithms which can make which can make a commodity camera work like an SLR. Okay. Similarly, if you look at customer relationships, you can use algorithms for customer retention. Okay. And typically, I would say people like, again, Eventbrite comes to my mind because it's a classic B2C example. They should be using that. This could also be true for somebody like Grammy Pay, because they can now promise better customer retention to the banks. Okay. If you look at the customer channels, okay, you have now there are predictive algorithms available for customer acquisition. Okay, so a lot of startups over here, what they do is when they try to acquire their customers, they look at a demand generation AI, okay, which allows them to not demand generation, I should say lead generation AIs, okay, which allows them to identify these are possible hot targets for me that I should contact. Okay, so what these models do is they actually go over the web, looking for information pertaining to the product or the nature of the product or the category of the product, and try to find out who is engaging, how they're engaging. And then they also try to leverage things like LinkedIn and so on. And they even come to you and tell you that, okay, this company is a likely buyer for you, and these are the contact people. Okay, so then you can get started with that. So customer acquisition, AI plays a big role. And again, if you look at revenue streams also, AI plays a big role, because algorithms are used in dynamic pricing. Like Uber has this dynamic pricing, right? When there's high traffic, the cost of the ride will go up automatically. And when there is low demand or uptake, the cost will automatically come down. Airlines do the same thing, right? So they all use algorithms. So that's what I wanted to stop here and talk in terms of algorithms, basically. Okay. Now I'll come to a very interesting concept, which is called as the virtuous cycle. Okay. And I would encourage everybody to really understand this properly, because if you are able to build a virtuous cycle in your business model, okay, you are going to impress the investors quite a bit. Okay. So let me first explain to you what is virtuous cycle. So it's a cycle of recurring events, okay, where the result of one activity, okay, leads to an increased benefit from another activity. Okay. So let me take an example over here. Okay. You want to build better products, right? Why do you want to build better products? Because, you'll have more usage. Okay. Sorry, Abhijit, you wanted to say something? Okay. You want to build better products. Okay. So because you want more usage, right? If you have better products, people will use it more. If people use a product more, they will generate more data. Okay. Moment they generate more data, you'll be now able to refine your products and make those products still better, because now you have the usage data available on that product. So you'll be able to make them. So this is now a virtuous cycle. Okay. So your products will continue to be better, and because they're better, you'll get more usage and you'll get more data. Okay. Google is a classic example of that, right? Now, if you have better products, what will happen is you will make more money. Okay. Now, if you make more money because you have better products, okay, you will have now resources to buy new technology. Okay. So new technology again will help you, understand the usage data better and capture more data now with the newer technology, and again create better products. Okay. So this is the virtuous cycle. And since I mentioned Google, I will also take an example of Google. Okay. But why is virtuous cycle so important? Because there are two things very critical for a startup. One is the time and other is the scale. Okay. So, when an investor looks at your startup, first of all, if your startup is running there for 7-8 years, okay, the investor and has not generated any money, it's still generating very small revenues, the investor may not be interested. Okay. Because they want to look at startups which reach product market fit really fast. Okay. The other thing that they are going to look at is, okay, he has figured out these things, he's got 100 customers. Okay. How can he take these 100 customers to 1,000 customers? Okay. So how does he get the scale? Okay. So scales are possible if you have virtuous cycle, and virtuous cycle will also help you reduce the time to achieve scale and time to achieve your product market fit and stay ahead in the game. Let's take a look at the virtuous cycle of Google. Okay. So let's begin with Google wants people to use Google search a lot more. Okay. So they want more usage. So, okay. Why do they want more usage? Because more the usage, they can get more data for their algorithms. Okay. They can improve their algorithms. So with improved algorithms, you will have better search, and better search will result in more usage. Okay. So this is one cycle of Google virtuous cycle. Now, if you have better search, you have better branding. Okay. Google search is better than Bing, right? So you have better branding. If you have better branding, you will have more users coming to Google than going to Bing, right? So you have more users. And when you have more users, you'll obviously have more usage. Okay. So look at this cycles. Okay. I got a better search, I got more usage got me more data for all goals, and that resulted again in better search, which gave me better branding, which gave me more users, which gave me more usage. Okay. Now, if I have more usage, what happens? I have more eyeballs. I have more people coming to my site and looking at Google search. And because I have more eyeballs, I have more advertisers who are willing to advertise on Google search, right? And because I have more advertisers, now I get more data for algorithms, because now I don't just get search data, I get data, okay, for the advertisers. Okay, if the if how many people are looking at advertisement for fans, how many people are looking for advertisements for air conditioners, okay, how many people are looking for advertisements for garments, okay. So they start collecting more and more data, and that's again a vicious cycle. So if you see here, there are basically three loops. Okay, the first loop is obviously what we call as the network effect loop. Okay, so you see this network effect loop: better search, more usage, more data for algorithms. Okay, so that's the network effect. Okay, the second loop is about the branding, right? It is creating better brand for you. Better brand means better business. Okay, and increased volume of the business. And the third loop, we call it as the revenue loop. Okay, revenue loop, because this more usage is going to increase your revenue. Okay, you're going to get more eyeballs, more advertisers, and so you're going to get more revenue. So this is the virtuous cycle. Now Amazon tried to really look at this virtuous cycle. This was actually introduced by a guy called Jim Collins. Okay, so I don't know if you've anyone of you heard of the book called In Search of Excellence. Okay, so he was one of the authors of the Search of Excellence, and then he came up with this concept called flywheel. Okay, so flywheel is a very simple concept. Flywheel is about attracting customers, okay, engaging customers, and then turning your customers into promoters by delighting them. Okay, so it is a loop of attract, engage, and delight. Okay, so sounds very simple, but I will show you now how Amazon used that flywheel to create their virtuous cycle. Okay, so this is Amazon's virtuous cycle. Okay, so if you remember, Amazon started as an online retailer. Okay, they used to buy goods, buy books, DVDs, and so on, and sell. Okay, then they started buying other goods and started selling them. Okay, it was a very linear model, right? It's a very trading model, a linear model, but they added non-linearity to it by building a digital platform. Okay, and and this is a very, very good case study, of how introducing digitalization or digital platforms can really convert your linear businesses into non-linear businesses. Okay, so somewhere around 2000, Amazon wasn't growing as fast as it was hoping to. Okay, it was buying a lot of inventory and trying to sell it to customers, but its growth rate had stalled. Okay, so Amazon said, so since Amazon is purely focused on customer experience, the leaders of Amazon said, okay, fundamentally, we want to be a company, where we are all about customer experience and customer centricity, right? We want to be the most customer-centric organization on this earth. Okay, so as Jeff Bezos says. Okay, but how do we do it? Okay, so that's where they wrote this down, and this was basically this Virtuous Cycle was created by Jeff Bezos and his team at the back of a paper napkin at a coffee shop. Okay. And what they wrote down over here has truly inspired a lot of other startups. Okay. So their thing was, how do we enhance customer experience? Why are we not growing? So we are not growing because, we are buying some products and selling. We want to increase the selection. We want to give choice to the customer. So giving more choice to the customer will enhance their experience. And, if you have more products, then we will have more traffic, okay, coming to us. So how do we do that? How do we give them more choices? Okay, so they said, okay, so let's invite sellers to put their products on our platform. And this is where the Amazon marketplace was born. Okay, so Amazon has two distinct things, right? They have vendor central and seller central. Okay, so vendor central is more like an e-commerce business, and the seller central is more like a marketplace. Okay, where the sellers come, put their goods. Okay, the buyers come, look at the goods that are available and decide to buy, and the seller pays a price to Amazon for using the platform. Okay, so this was like a very cool thing for Amazon. And the beauty is obviously, the sellers were paying for the infrastructure. Okay, so Amazon, by the virtue of charging the seller for the infrastructure, were able to reduce their cost structure. Okay, their cost structure went down. Okay, and because their cost structure went down, they were now able to afford lower prices to their customers. Okay, because the shipment costs go down. Okay, the cost of infrastructure goes down. So now they could pass on those benefits to increase the customer experience. Okay, this is typically the flywheel experience. Okay, for the seller, yes, he had a ready platform which was getting traffic, and he was able to sell his wares, right? So that is, from a seller's perspective, this is great, because I'm looking at my sales and profits, by going to Amazon's platform. Another interesting thing happened over here. Okay, and so what happened is, as the velocity of traffic increased, as the number of customers increased, as the number of sellers increased, okay, Amazon was able now to invest in their infrastructure, which improved their efficiency, okay, of the infrastructure as well as the delivery. So they had a faster and more reliable delivery. Okay, so you see Amazon, you order today and you can get those things delivered tomorrow, right? Okay, the same thing now everybody is trying to emulate. So if I order something today and it gets delivered tomorrow, why would I really go to a shop? I would rather order online, and that enhances the customer experience. So this is the entire flywheel experience that Amazon did. So I would strongly encourage, apart from building a business model, try to start thinking of virtuous cycle. Okay, you may not get it in first go, but multiple iterations where the mentors can help you, where the workshop team can help you, you can build a virtuous cycle, and it'll be something unique that you are now able to present to the investors. Okay, I've seen very few startups being able to talk in terms of virtuous cycle. But if you say that, see, look, this is my big picture. This is how my business is going to go hit the scale. And this is how, even when it hits scale, I don't have to worry, right? Because these things are interconnected and they will happen automatically. Okay. So with that, I would just like to stop over here.